and welcome back to another episode of Advanced RC Adventures. A2RC here. This is a channel where we investigate, explore, build and explain, upgrade and advance Nitro RCs to another level. Come start a new adventure with me. Today we have a pretty interesting and unique adventure to share with you today. We're going to do a lot of the same, but a couple of things different. We're going to be doing a Nitro engine overview with this AE Team Associated 15S engine. The box is yet to be opened. We're still factory sealed right here. We're going to do this together. This is going to be an overview, but I don't know exactly what to expect. We're going to do an unboxing. We're going to take apart the engine as we normally would for an overview and have the full complete adventure together. My guess is that this is built by Golden Lion, the SH company, and this is going to be a clone or essentially the same thing. I hope that there's a little bit of an update to the Dynamite Mach 15 engine. We're going to do a little bit of comparison. I've done some prep work. We've got a Mach 15 old block here and a couple other components. So let's get this box opened up and start the adventure. Have a razor blade here. Let's cut open the factory seal. Seal is now open. Opening us up together. So we have some bubble wrap here. Let's put the box to the side. Loosely wrapped bubble wrap here. Another bag of bubble wrap. And this is exactly how you're going to get it if you go ahead and order this. This was a pre-order. There's no bag, no desiccant. Let's take a little walk around. What I see here in person now, because I've seen them on pictures and on a couple of videos, is that I'm expecting essentially the same engine from 20 plus years ago as the Mach 15. Let's do a little walk around. What I love though is that this is a bump start engine. It is a short shaft. They've designed this for the RC10 GT. The original Mach 15 went in the low C XXX NT in their Ready to Write Graphite series stadium truck. So no surprises yet. It does come with a glow plug, so that's nice. I have an assortment of tools with me, so let's go ahead and get this engine broken down and start the adventure. Like all of our adventures, we're going to start with the carburetor. This looks to be a 6mm. I'm prepared for that. Yes, it is. It's a 6mm standard nut on your pinch bolt. Wiggle off our carb. From first glance, this looks just like, or very similar. There might be some differences to the Mach 15 rotary style carb. We've got a butyl boot there on the side. We have our high-speed needle here. We have our low-speed needle there on the rotary barrel. We have a butyl O-ring there on the base of the neck. Brass high-speed needle housing with a plastic nipple. Idle screw adjustment there. Let's reach down inside of this bore and see what we're working with. So this is a 6.5mm bore, which is, I would say, a decent size. 10mm neck, which again I would expect and is probably most common for these style carbs for the engine size. Got a nice AE kind of badge right there on the front. So let's go ahead and put that aside here. We're going to open up this back plate and continue on. This is a 2mm hex. So before we pop that off, let's give our back plate bolts a little measure here. This is an M2.6 bolt, and it is about 8mm long. So that's a good size backplate bolt for this 15S. I wish that the Mach 15 came in a bump start version. I don't believe that it did. Let's go ahead and take off this back plate before we look at our internals. So this is a semi-interference engine. Notice that cutout there. We've got a nice butyl O-ring there for the back plate, so I'm liking what I'm seeing here. I don't know if this is anodizing or black oxide. I kind of doubt that it's DLC coating. My guess is that it's some kind of black oxide or some matte finish anodization on the back plate. But I like that there's a nice butyl O-ring for the back plate. Otherwise, it's relatively standard. Let's take a look down inside. Take a look at our internals here. Let's keep going and pop off this head. So we got this head off. I'm always curious, especially on brand new released engines, what the fit and finish is. This is a little bit different blue of a head color than the Mach 15 from 20 plus years ago. It's slightly lighter blue, but it's effectively the exact same. Now, this is a Mach 15 here, which looks silver. It's been halfway removed of its color, but notice it's literally the exact same design. I don't see anything different so far about it. We can go ahead, because I'm curious, this is an interesting way to do some comparison on a new release engine. So that reads 21.2 on that inner button bore and 21.2. So this is effectively the exact same head, and that's no surprise. That's what I saw on some photos. Other companies in the past, like Crazy Nut and others, made some aftermarket heads, and I hope that companies are able to do that as well for this 15S AE release. This is a button style engine again, button head style engine, just like the Mach 15. This uses a standard plug. See if we can't wiggle off our head shim. We have one copper head shim. There is no other instructions. It's 0.1. So that's a very low amount of shim stack. I would have expected something different, but I was looking through my box of components for Mach 15, and it's possible that's the same for the Mach 15 as well. What I was getting ready to say is that there was no instructions that was given inside of the box. The box is empty and bare. You get the engine, and that is all. So that's honestly a little bit disappointing from SH or AE to not provide any additional written information. Now, this was the pre-order, the pre-release. Maybe when the normal additional stock hits the shelves, they're going to have some additional information, but we'll just have to wait and see. Back to that fit and finish conversation, we had inconsistent torques on these head bolts. There were two that were extremely tough and two that were moderately secured down to the block. So that's definitely something that, for some feedback for Golden Line, even though they've been around for so long, to pay attention to that type of fit and finish. Let's pop out the sleeve. We're going to do a comparison between this 15S sleeve and the 15 or the Mach 15 engine. My guess is that it's going to be the exact same. We will find out together. That's why we're doing this. See if we can't wiggle out our piston. That came out okay. At first glance, it's looking the same already. Let's take out our crank. Now the crank's going to be effectively the same too, but this being a short cut crank, that's going to probably be the only difference. To me, when we went over the brand new full build assembled Mach 15 with that Crazy Nut head, this looks to be the exact same style crank. A relatively small induction window here. It's not drilled or filled. That unique semi-cut there on the balance lobe. Let's go ahead and measure the induction bore while we're here. 6.3. So not crazy, but still definitely relatively efficient for this 15 size engine. Let's pick up the block. Let's talk about some horsepower numbers. Take out this pinch bolt. It's like you may only be able to take it out one way. Take off the nut, take it out the other way. There's no additional O-ring down inside. Just the one butyl O-ring on the base of the carb. Horsepower numbers. I've not ever found, and maybe somebody out there does have formal information. I've never ever found exact horsepower numbers for the Mach 15. Knowing what some of its competitors and sister engines were, my guess was somewhere between 0.7 and 0.9 horsepower. This particular engine on the box claims that it's 0.85 horsepower. So it's right in that world of what I would kind of expect. The bearings are chrome steel front and rear. Let's measure the inner bore. It's a 9mm inner bore bearing. Looks like the exact same front and rear. There are some cutouts, some mill work down inside of the block for the transfer ports and the boost port, and a relatively small window down inside for the side exhaust. Let's pick up the Mach 15 block right next to it. Looks like there are a little bit of differences. So the badging for the Mach 15 area, as well as where the AE symbol, notice the amount of fins are slightly different. The casting for the ribs up here in front, notice on the new AE block there's 4 compared to 3. The engine mount flange, take a look here, it is a different length. It's still a standard small block engine mount flange, but it is slightly different. Pretty much the same look from the front. The badging itself is slightly different than the casting on the right hand side of the engine for the 15C, and then the Mach 15 just has a number 15 on its side. And a little bit different. Looks like there's 2 fins here on the Mach 15, and they decided to remove that on the new 15S block. So we gained some fins and structure here. We lost some around the body of the sleeve. That body of the sleeve where those fins could be is actually probably more important than these down here, but it may not have any structural difference between the 2 blocks. But they are very, very similar. Going back to fit and finish, there's definitely some scuff marks here on the top of the block. The rest of the block is all matte finish, so there's nothing really distinguishable, but there are a couple nicks here on the fins right below the carb area. So let's keep moving on. We'll go over to the piston assembly here. This is a flat top piston. There's a little marking down below that says A on top of the piston. This is a cast piston that's later machined. There's one single oil groove on top here. This looks to be a billet machined connecting rod though, and there is a brass bushing down below. This is a captured wrist pin. There's no clip on this side, there's one clip on the other side, and this looks very similar to the Mach 15 setup. There's one oil hole right down there below. So let's take out this brand new Mach 15 22 or 23 something year old piston, and look, we have our first update. There's kind of a ghost line on top here for the oil groove, but nothing pronounced like this one here. They look to be effectively the same height. There's still a cutout here in the skirt. This is a cast piston as well, and then later machined. Let's go ahead and give this a measure and see if the bore is the same. So this is the Mach 15. We're right at 15mm or 14.99. The box says that the 15S engine is a 15mm bore, and that is literally the exact same size. I'm curious if the Mach 15 has a little engraving on top, and I don't see an engraving on this Mach 15 piston. Whereas there's a little A that's engraved on the top. I don't know if you can see that on top of the 15S piston. And the connecting rod looks effectively the same. We have a brand new Mach 15 connecting rod here. It's got the oil groove. There's no bushing on top for the wrist pin, which I suspect that this will be the same way. On the back side, it's flat. On this side of the Mach 15 here, it looks to be effectively the same. This is still in its package. There's no reason to take that out. That's going to stay available for a build in the future. And before we go on to the sleeve, let's talk about horsepower numbers. I started to say that. So the 15S claims 0.85 horsepower. And the next best thing from its competitor is OS, and that's the 15CV. It's another 2.49cc engine. It claims to have 6.8 horsepower. We're going to leave this 15CV in the bag, and we're going to take a look at this at a future episode here on the channel. But the bore here is 15.2 millimeters, so it's slightly bigger bore, but the stroke is slightly less. 15CV has 13.7, where the 15S Mach 15 sister has a stroke of 14 millimeter. They both kind of equal each other out to get to that 2.49cc, but the 15S claims about 28,000 RPM, where the OS 15CV has a little bit more at 30,000 RPM, and they're both effectively the same weight for the engine. So we'll take a look at this 15CV from OS in a future episode. So let's go on over to the sleeve. This is an ABN style engine where we have an aluminum piston. We have a brass sleeve, but it's coated fully in nickel. So the nickel is not as durable as chrome lining, but it definitely does the job. So let's go on over here. We have a pretty standard rectangular exhaust port for the side exhaust. Nothing really to say or look. There's nothing necessarily fancy about that. A pretty wide transfer port here on both sides. I don't see any beveling. There's definitely no fangs or anything of that nature. Just a standard rectangle for that transfer port. And then come over to the boost port. And this is a pretty nice looking boost port. It's nice and big and wide. It has a nice leading edge bevel. And talking about bevels, there's a nice bevel here on the very bottom portion of the sleeve to help with that air and fuel mixture to get around to its ports. So let's take a look at the Mach 15 sleeve. I suspect that it's going to be essentially the exact same thing. We have the Mach 15 sleeve here. We have the 15S sleeve here. Go on around. Transfer ports look about the same, but we can take a measure. And then we have exhaust port. This is effectively the exact same. Let's go ahead and measure the outside bore. 17, 18.07 versus 18.07. This is literally the exact same sleeve as the Mach 15. Let's measure the opening, the width of the exhaust bore, 4.32. Measure the other one on the 15S, 4.33. Let's go ahead and measure the boost port width, 7.32. Let's get in there the exact same way. 7.3839. It's essentially, these are the exact same sleeve. Maybe for timing's sake, let's go ahead and do one last measure, and we'll take it from the transfer port down to the base of the sleeve. 8.8, 8.81. This might have a small difference, but it depends on how I'm measuring. 8.96. So there might be a slight timing change for here. Let's go ahead and measure the exhaust port. 9.39. .20. So there may be a little bit of change, a small amount of change, but I bet they would effectively run the exact same way, but there could be some updates to that sleeve. So that's quite interesting that on the surface they look the exact same, but they might have adjusted some of the timing for the engine. In saying that though, we have, in a sense, a 20-plus-something-year-old engine brought back to life. The Mach 15 hasn't been produced in many, many years, and we now see a new flavor of it, a new version, or at least the same version that we probably can get new parts for our Mach 15 out of this AE15S. So quite an interesting unboxing and episode to share with everybody. Everyone gets to see the internals of a brand new release engine. We've got the AE Team Associated 15S engine. And if you happen to like these types of engine overviews and want to see some more in the future, or even perhaps check out some of the ones we've done in the past, then feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you like 10 scale, Nitro, and especially touring cars, then this is the place to be. And thanks for taking the adventure with me. Last thing I want to say here at the end for fit and finish on this 15S, you can see all kinds of machine marks down inside of this sleeve. So if you're listening SH, let's get these 15S's all cleaned up and ready to shine for those RC10 GTs.